Episode 35.
35 of Girls Gone Spooky.
Okay. And we're going under the sea,
Under the
baby.
sea. Can't wait.
Use spooky little Seaward Hags. Let's do this shit.
That's
So,
perfect.
spooky little Seaward Hags. Okay, so Amy is up first today, and I'm so excited to hear what she has to say. I did like two topics that are like, well, I guess technically kind of three, but I won't spoil it. You go and then I'll introduce mine.
Okay, sounds good. Also, really quick, unrelated, but have you
Mhm.
been watching Stranger Things?
No, I really wanted to finish Ozark and I just finished it last night, but I've gotten
Okay,
messages from people like my mom, Lauren, who are like, this season is too scary for me.
it's scary. Yeah, I've
I'm
been
so
watching
excited.
it. Like, it's especially because we rewatched season 3 in preparation for this. It's
Mhm.
totally different. Like,
Really?
yeah, it's
Is
scary.
the director the same?
I think so. I'm pretty
I wonder if
sure.
maybe, yeah, I wonder if maybe they've like, because sometimes they'll do like a little cameo director, like some episodes are
Yeah.
directed by like one of the actors.
Hmm.
I wonder if they're doing that, or maybe season three
Maybe.
they did that, so it was like softer. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I don't know,
Violence.
but
I'm here for it.
I
Well,
mean, you're gonna
fictional
see.
violence,
I've
to
had
be
to
fair.
like cover my eyes and ears and like hum through a lot of parts, and you will see why. And anyone who listens to
Oh
this
no,
regularly also knows my
lots of
fear.
bone
Yeah.
cracking.
Hmm.
Oh
So
God.
yeah, let me know when you watch it because
Okay,
it's
I will.
yeah, and it's
I'll
less
probably
about
watch.
monsters and more about something else. So creepy.
Oh God. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you just like really piqued my interest with that. I
Uh-huh.
was gonna say I probably won't watch it tonight, but maybe I'll have to. I have yoga this evening, but maybe I'll stay up after that.
Yeah, you might need to, but
Oh my
also
God.
I had some bad dreams from it.
I bet you
So,
did.
but
Well,
like,
my mom kind of like teased, like lightly spoiled, but teased the like little like disclaimer at the beginning
mhm.
in the
Yes,
first episode, so I
yeah,
won't say anything about it, but just heads up, keep an eye out for that disclaimer before
yes,
you start the first
yeah,
episode, everybody listening to
definitely.
this.
Yep. Anyone who's
Um,
gonna watch it, I'm glad they put that warning on. It was
yeah,
warranted. So, yeah.
yeah.
But that was an
Um,
aside, totally unrelated
okay.
to what I'm
I
talking
will,
about.
well, our next episode, I'll have watched it for sure by our next recording session, so we can
Okay.
do a no spoiler debrief.
Yeah, because I was thinking as I was watching it that the thing in there would be a good topic potentially.
Oh my God, wait, I'm so
I
excited.
I haven't Googled it. I don't even know if they made it up for the show or if it's based
Okay,
on
okay,
something else,
okay.
but we'll see. I'll look it
Oh
up
my God,
later.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, here we
Here we
go.
go.
Diving in. Get
Uh-huh.
it? Get it?
Literally
Get it? Get it?
diving in.
All you, sis.
um, okay, so yes, I'm going to talk about two things today that are intertwined with each other. The first one being the Flying Dutchman, which is a ghost ship that people have probably heard of from Pirates of the Caribbean or just other pirate lore. Um, so here we go. The legend goes that the captain of the Dutchman was named Captain Hendrik van der Decken,
Mm.
and he captained the ship for the Dutch East India Trading Company. And one version of the story goes that in 1641, Captain Hendrik wanted to make the journey from the East Indies back to the Netherlands as fast as possible. So he opted to take the route around the Cape of Good Hope, which is at the tip of South Africa.
Mhm.
But as they approached the Cape, of course, a severe storm came along. But Captain Hendrik was steadfast in this notion that he wanted to take that route home, and he barreled on right into the storm. And as things were getting worse, his crew were pleading with him to turn around, and there was even a mutiny to try to overthrow him. But somehow he managed to kill the leader of the mutiny, throw him overboard, and he loudly declared that he would complete the journey around the Cape, even if it took him, quote, until doomsday.
Dramatic.
Yeah, very dramatic. But as soon as he said that, an angel, is what this version said, appeared to challenge those words. Like, did you really want to say that? And he did.
You sure?
Yeah, he doubled down.
Their fate was sealed. Proceed.
Okay, so yeah, their fate was sealed to sail the ocean for all eternity. And
that sucks.
Yeah. Yep, it sure does. And this other version, though, that rather than the angel coming, the devil came.
Oh.
And he, for whatever reason, gave them an out from the curse, saying that the true love of a woman would free Captain Hendrik from the curse and his crew. But the catch was that Hendrik could only go on land in search of his true love once every 7 years. So he didn't have good odds.
No.
But also,
and if if the dating scene then is anything like it is now, good luck.
Truly. And also, I don't think he's aging normally, but if he's aging 7 years every time, it's just getting like more and more decrepit.
Crusty.
Yeah. So that's the legend of the Dutchman. And over the years, there have been several sightings, actually I'd say many sightings of the Dutchman noted in captain's logs and things like that, journals.
Whoa.
Yeah. But the most compelling one was in 1881, and it was on July 11th. It was the future King George V, Prince Albert, and their tutor, John Neil Dalton. They were on a sailing trip around the world. And at the time of this event, they were sailing on the coast of Australia. And around 4 a.m., everyone on board saw glowing red lights surrounding a ship on the horizon. So of the incident, they wrote, "The Flying Dutchman crossed our bows. A strange red light as of a phantom ship all aglow, in the midst of which light the masts, spars, and sails of a brig 200 yards distant stood out in strong relief as she came up on the port bow. The officer of the watch from the bridge clearly saw her, as did the quarter-deck midshipman, who was sent forward at once to the forecastle." All these boat parts, I don't know.
Me neither.
But on arriving there was no vestige nor any sign whatever of any material ship. So they all saw it, and when suddenly it was gone. As soon as it came, it was gone. So
Wild.
They thought it was the Dutchman. And then one other prominent sighting of it was actually, I guess, sort of recent in 1939, actually. And it was to people on a beach in South Africa. So they weren't even out sailing. They just saw it from the shore. And the paper, the British South Africa Annual, wrote, "With uncanny volition, the ship sailed steadily on as the Glencairn beach folk stood about keenly discussing the whys and wherefores of the vessel. Just as the excitement reached its climax, however, the mystery ship vanished into thin air as strangely as it had come." So.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah. And those presumably weren't pirates having a beach day. So, yeah, I don't know.
Hey guys, how do you feel about grabbing some burritos, heading to the beach,
just a little
trying to work on our tan?
So,
oh god,
yeah, mysterious.
Very mysterious.
Sailors, though, believe that when you see the Dutchman, that marks like imminent doom, which is why it isn't surprising that the Dutchman became associated with Davy Jones, even though he was not the captain of the ship according to the original legend. But just have a little bit about Davy Jones now, since they are intertwined, especially if you've seen Pirates of the Caribbean, whatever. But Davy Jones is said to be the keeper of Davy Jones' locker, which is an idiom for the sea floor, aka the final resting place for sailors who die out at sea. And an early description of him from 1751 depicts him as, another long quote, the fiend that presides over all the evil spirits of the deep, and is often seen in various shapes, perching among the rigging on the eve of hurricanes, shipwrecks, and other disasters to which seafaring life is exposed, warning the devoted wretch of death and woe.
Jeez.
So, an omen of evil, basically.
Right.
And that same description also says that he has saucer eyes, 3 rows of teeth, horns, a tail, and blue smoke coming from his nostrils. So he is that sounds like the devil, basically, rather than the octopus man.
Aquatic.
Yeah, exactly. Blue rather than
the devil,
red.
But make it aquatic.
Precisely. So, yeah, that's how they viewed him. And then quickly some theories about the origin of this legend. Some say that Davy Jones might be a corruption of the prophet Jonah, which kind of makes sense because part of Jonah's story, if I'm not mistaken, involves him being swallowed by a huge fish. My biblical knowledge is not great, but I'm pretty sure.
No, that's right. That's definitely right.
Okay. So then there was also some suspicion that Davy Jones was based on a real pirate who was named David Jones, and he sailed in the 1630s. But historians believe that that's not likely because he was not notorious enough to become a legend or like not even a very good pirate. So it's probably not him.
Mediocre pirate.
Yeah, he would not turn into legend. But yeah, then there was also a British pub owner who was also named David Jones. And he was known for capturing drunk men in his pub and selling them to be drafted onto pirate ships. So could be that because he's kind of condemning them to life at sea. And then lastly, this one's funny. There was a pirate named Duffer Jones who was extremely nearsighted. And as a result, he was seen accidentally walking overboard several times. So maybe him.
Not the sharpest tool in the shed.
No. But yeah, pretty funny.
That's funny as hell.
Yeah, so it was a short one today, but I didn't really know the legends surrounding those than from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Right.
So
it's really funny because one of my good friends at work, his family is from Guyana, and so I asked him one time, I was like, how do you pronounce this word? And he was like, I said, how do you pronounce the C word in the movie Pirates of the, and he was like, Pirates of the Caribbean, but if I'm referring to the Caribbean, I call it the Caribbean. And I was like, he was like, I don't know, I've never even thought about that. Like, why do we pronounce it like that just for the movie?
I know.
But
it must have been because that's how they did it in the previews or something.
Probably.
Like Pirates of the Caribbean. Maybe that's how British people say it.
Maybe. I don't know. It's funny as shit, though. Oh, God. But yeah.
Anyway,
like those. I honestly, like, the only thing I know of the Flying Dutchman is what I've learned from SpongeBob. So. I didn't
Amazing.
realize that there were like sightings. Like whenever I think of
Mhm.
like that, like ghost ships, I think of obviously the Black Pearl and then Peter Pan. But that's like
Mhm.
it. And I guess SpongeBob because there's a
Yeah.
Flying Dutchman in that.
Uh-huh.
But
Yep.
it's funny because like, do you know where the legend like originated?
No, I think
They didn't say.
it was the subject of an opera by Wagner, I think it was.
Oh, I didn't.
But I don't know if that was based on another story that he had
Right.
heard about it or what.
Or he invented it. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
I think it's a little bit mysterious.
Well, on that note,
Yes.
we're going to start with a couple other mysterious sea things.
See things.
See things.
Hmm.
Starting with sirens. So
Ooh.
sirens have over the years been conflated with mermaids, and we will get to that in a moment. But a
Hmm.
siren is actually completely different from a mermaid. I always read that, like on the Starbucks cup, that is actually a siren because it has two tails.
Oh.
But
Oh
turns
yeah.
out that mermaids are, or mermen for the masculine, are actually half woman and half fish, but sirens are actually half woman, half bird. So they're not
Oh.
even really an aquatic creature. They just are at sea and would like
Hmm.
lure men
Right.
to their deaths. So a little
Interesting.
bit more about their root in Greek mythology. So it's a creature, like I said, that's half bird and half woman. Historically, they've been known to lure sailors to destruction by the sweetness of their song. They were first like brought into popular culture, I guess, a long time ago, through Homer. So according to Homer, there were two sirens on an island in the Western Sea between Aia and the rocks of Scylla. I don't know if I'm pronouncing any of that right, but it's
Hmm.
all in, I think, the Odyssey, as well as a couple others I'll mention here in a moment. Um, Later in the story, the number increased to three sirens, and then they were located on the west coast of Italy near Naples. They were variously said to be the daughters of the sea god Phorcys or of the river god Achilles by one of the muses. So it's kind of like where exactly they came from. I mean, I would guess if they're in one part of like the Mediterranean, it wouldn't be unreasonable for them to also be on the coast of Italy. But
Hmm.
um, so basically, in Odyssey by Homer, book 12, the Greek hero Odysseus is advised by the sorceress Circe, and escapes the danger of their song by stopping the ears of his crew with wax so that they were deaf to the siren's song. Odysseus himself wanted to hear their song, but had himself tied to the mast so that he would not be able to steer the ship off its course.
Hmm.
Apollonius of Rhodes in Argonautica, which is book 4, relates that when the Argonauts sailed that way, Orpheus sang so divinely that only one of the Argonauts heard the siren song. According to Argonautica, Butes alone who was the only one who heard it. Butes alone was compelled by the sirens' voices to jump into the water, but his life was saved by the goddess Cyprus, which is also a cult name for Aphrodite.
Hmm.
And then in Hyginus, I don't know who that is.
Mm-mm.
Hyginus Fabulae, number 141, back, same like Greek literature. A mortal's
Hmm.
ability to resist them actually caused the sirens to commit suicide. So by resisting them, you would actually kill them or like defeat them.
Hmm.
Um, in Ovid, Metamorphoses, book 5, Ovid wrote that the sirens were human companions of Persephone. So after she was carried off by Hades, they sought her everywhere and finally prayed for wings to fly across the sea. The gods granted their prayer, and in some versions, Demeter turned them into birds to punish them for not guarding Persephone. In art, the sirens appeared first as birds with the head of women, and later as women, sometimes winged with bird legs, which is an image.
Bird legs.
In terms of like the um, like the real life, like what the legend was likely based on. They seem to have evolved from an ancient tale of the perils of early exploration, combined with an Asian image of a bird woman. Anthropologists explain the Asian image as a soul bird, which is a winged ghost that stole the living to share its fate. And that in that same respect, the sirens had affinities with the harpies, which are another kind of like Greek mythology, but I'm not going to get into that in a ton of detail.
Right.
So obviously, the sirens are, kind of associated generally with death. So I think there's something like it's kind of important to tie them together. There are a lot of statues of sirens in like funerary contexts, dating back to the classical era in Greece, as well as across Asia and other parts of Europe. So that's just kind of interesting. The term siren song obviously isn't just to do with sirens anymore, but it refers to any kind of appeal that's hard to resist, but that, if heeded, will lead to a bad conclusion, usually death. Writers have implied since the days of Homer and Ovid that the sirens were actually cannibals, based on Circe's description of them, quote, lolling there in their meadow, round them heaps of corpses rotting away, rags of skin shriveling on their bones, end quote.
Ew.
Oh,
Yuck.
and then another linguist named Jane Ellen Harrison says, quote, it is strange and beautiful that Homer should make the sirens appeal to the spirit, not to the flesh. The siren song is, or end quote, excuse me. The siren song is a promise to Odysseus of mantic truths, which, with a false promise that he will live to tell them, they sing. Once he hears to his heart's content, sails on a wiser man. We know all the pains that the Greeks and Trojans once endured on the spreading plain of Troy, when the gods willed it so. All that comes to pass on the fertile earth, we know it all. So they're not actually like, I think in I thought of them always as like an incubus or succubus kind of vibe, but they're not actually. It's like we have knowledge of the universe that we can share with you, and you can, tell it to anybody you want once you leave us, but they never leave. So
Yeah. That is pretty cool.
Yeah, Harrison goes on to say they're mantic creatures like the Sphinx, with whom they have much in common, knowing both the past and the future. Their song takes effect at midday in a windless calm, and the end of that song is death. So, it's kind of creepy. Either way, whether they're cannibals or not. It's been suggested too that with their feathers stolen, given they were either punished with feathers or they prayed for them to follow Persephone or to try to find her, their divine nature keeps them alive, but they're unable to provide food for their visitors, so they starve to death by refusing to leave. So it's like it's either that they lure them in knowingly to kill them, or possibly people are just so taken by their song and they have no way to keep a living mortal alive, and so they die of starvation, basically. So just some little like possible theories there.
Yeah, cool.
This page isn't loading. Hold on. Okay, here we go. So obviously like the combination of like sirens and then mermaids, like they're two completely separate things, but they're very intermingled at this point. So they've been linked to sirens specifically, have been linked to various locations, some of which I've mentioned already. Some are real, some are actually made up locations, but it's all primarily in and around Italy and Greece. Popular myth seems to have pinned them to the Tyrrhenian Sea, which is off the coast of Sorrento. And legend has it that sirens would tempt sailors with their beautiful song and drive them to shipwreck on the rocky shores of the islands in the sea. Because there are photos of like the coastline along like Capri Island. It's like rocks, like there's no beach, it's just rocks. Some depictions even have described men leaping haplessly from their ships into the waves of sea after the sounds of sirens' voices. So obviously, like it, there were a bunch of appearances of sirens in Homer's writings, which were, as a reminder, written in the 8th century BC. So
So
these are
long
like
ago.
old.
Uh-huh.
He mentions sirens, but it's really quite brief, especially compared to modern tellings of sirens. Um, as I said, that he put wax in his sailors' ears and then tied himself to the mast of the ship. Um, and basically, like, the draw for him specifically was that they would tell him everything he wanted to know specifically about the Trojan War. And he begged his crew to untie them, but they kept sailing, obviously. And so he was actually the first, Odysseus, according to legend, was the first to hear the song of the siren and live. So I don't know if that means that then the sirens died, but anyway. So it's kind of
Interesting.
unclear how or why mermaids and sirens got conflated. Mermaids are also part of Greek mythology as well. Some of the first stories are from ancient Syria, but in Greek mythology, mermaids were the daughters of Triton, so same as like in
The Little Mermaid.
Ariel, yeah, Little
Yeah.
Mermaid.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of contradictory information about what the powers of mermaids were or are, and this may be where the conflation of mermaid and siren comes into play. So some say that they're terrible and destructive, that they're actually like demonic, and they wish only for sailors and their ships to crash. Others say that they're helpful and would calm the waters if sailors would answer their questions. So they're thought to be, regardless if you view them as like good, neutral, evil, very curious. Like they want to be close to humanity, and probably because they're half human, allegedly. So the image of the mermaid is, iconic. She's always depicted as being beautiful with long flowing hair, the tail of a fish, and that's coming from both the Syrian and Greek mythology. In the 17th and 18th centuries, there was an influx of mermaid iconography, which also could account for the fusion of the mermaid and siren legends, especially since both are tied really closely to the sea. So what's interesting is that they actually think, because there have been sightings of sirens and or mermaids, actually mermaids according to the description of the two, um, by Christopher Columbus, but they were actually most likely manatees, which I thought was so funny. So the
Yeah.
history.com does a segment called This Day in History, and this is January 9th, 1493, and it is the day that Columbus sees mermaids. So 1493, January 9, Italian explorer Christopher Columbus, sailing near the Dominican Republic, sees three, quote, mermaids, in reality, manatees, and describes them, like, this is the best, describes them as, quote, not half as beautiful as they are painted. So that's hilarious.
Oh, what an
Um,
idiot.
such an idiot, just like a dick, and like not
Yeah.
that clever.
Yeah,
Um,
no.
yeah. So 6 months earlier, he had set off from Spain across the Atlantic with the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria, hoping to find a western trade route to Asia. Instead, he was led to the Americas or the New World. Mermaids, which are allegedly mythical, half female, half fish creatures, have existed in seafaring cultures at least since the time of the ancient Greeks, typically depicted as a woman's head or torso and fishtail instead of legs, usually holding a mirror and comb. Mermaids live in the ocean, and according to some legends, can take on human shape and marry mortal men, like
Mm.
Ariel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, sightings by sailors, when they weren't made up, were most likely manatees, dugongs, which I don't know what those are, or
Mm-mm.
sea cows, which actually became extinct by the 1760s due to overhunting, which,
Oh.
when I get in the ocean, I would beg to differ. Sea cow. Just kidding. I'm a sea hag.
Classic.
I'm a
Yeah,
sea hag.
same.
Um, Manatees, if you don't know what a manatee looks like, are very slow moving aquatic animals with human like eyes, bulbous faces, and paddle like tails. They
Yeah.
likely evolved, and this is so interesting to me, just like scientifically, they likely evolved from an ancestor they share with the elephant, which is
Oh,
really kind of cool.
cool. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so there are three different species of manatee and one species of dugong that belong to the Sirenia order. So the order of these animals is actually named after sirens, which is kind of funny. And they're 10 to 12 feet long. They're not like, that's what he saw. He didn't see mermaids. He saw
Right.
manatees.
Yeah.
But it's just so interesting. So I kind of started with sirens and then started slowly making my way down to mermaids. So mermaids, which I just explained, are upper body of a female human, bottom half is a fish. They appear in folklore of cultures really worldwide. So this isn't specific to the Greeks or any specific mythology. They're often associated with perilous events such as floods, storms, shipwrecks, drownings. In other traditions, they can be benevolent or beneficent, bestowing boons or falling in love with humans. Ariel. A lot of references to Ariel in here.
Yep.
The male equivalent of a mermaid is a merman, also a familiar figure in folklore and heraldry. Although traditions about and sightings of mermen are less common than those of mermaids, they're generally assumed to coexist with their female counterparts, which would kind of go against the Greek mythology, claiming them to be the daughters of Triton, but whatever.
Right.
Historical accounts of mermaids, such as those reported by Christopher Columbus, may have been sightings of manatees or similar aquatic animals. While there is no evidence that mermaids exist outside folklore, reports of mermaid sightings continue to the present day. So they've been a popular subject of art and literature, including Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Mermaid, which, if you've only seen the movie or read the Disney version, highly recommend reading Hans Christian Andersen's because it's very different.
Yeah.
So yeah, subsequently they've been depicted in operas, paintings, books, comics, animation, and live action films. So that's the mermaid sitch. What's interesting is I wanted to dig in a little more to the different origins, I guess, of mermaids, because there are just so many. And obviously I do think though that there's definitely there are real world origins, is kind of what I wanted to highlight. So centuries ago, mysterious sea serpents and mermaids were believed to be hidden in the world's vast oceans. And sidebar, I was really tempted to just go fully down the rabbit hole and do sea serpents, but I was just okay, we gotta stay focused because I have one other one that I really wanted to cover in this episode. So maybe we'll do a part 2 for Under the Sea, but I figured it would be a good start. So Greek mythology, of course, contains stories of the god Triton, who is the merman messenger of the sea, and several modern religions, including Hinduism and Candomblé, which is an Afro-Brazilian belief, worship mermaid goddesses to this day, which I thought was so interesting.
Yeah.
One of the earliest depictions of a mermaid came from Syrian mythology, and they go into to explain the details of where she came from, but truthfully I am going to butcher all of these words, so I'm just going to skip that part. Most people are familiar with the Disney version of the Little Mermaid, and I liked the way that Live Science explained, kind of characterized it, which is a somewhat sanitized version of Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale, first published in 1837. In some legends from Scotland and Wales, mermaids befriended and even married humans. In the Shetland Islands, mermaids are thought to be stunningly beautiful women who live under the sea. Their hybrid appearance is temporary, the effect being achieved by donning the skin of a fish. But they must be very careful not to lose this while wandering about on land, because without it, they'd be unable to return to their underwater realm. So lots of, interesting,
very,
origins. Mermen also have a fierce reputation for summoning storms, sinking ships, and drowning sailors. One especially feared group of mermen, which are called the Blue Men of the Minch, are said to dwell in the Outer Hebrides off the coast of Scotland, according to the Scotsman. They look like ordinary men from the waist up, with the exception of their blue-tinted skin and gray beards, which to me doesn't sound that ordinary, but okay.
No.
All right.
It's frostbitten old men.
Right. Or maybe it's
Fishmen.
just like everyone's so pale because they haven't seen the sun,
Yeah,
so they all look a little
true.
blue.
Yeah,
Local
true.
lore claims that before laying siege to a ship, the Blue Men often challenge its captain to a rhyming contest. And if the
Oh,
captain is quick enough of wit and agile enough of tongue, he can actually best the Blue Men and save his sailors from a watery grave. So,
rap battle.
kind of rap battle. Bunch of B-boys out there.
Amazing. Uh-huh.
Blue B-boys. Japanese legends have a version of merfolk called kappa, said to reside in Japanese lakes, coasts, and rivers. These child-sized water spirits appear more animal than human, with simian faces and tortoise shells on their backs. And that's according to the Encyclopedia Britannica. Like the blue men, the kappa sometimes interact with humans and challenge them to games of skill and challenge, or in which the penalty for losing is death. Casual.
Oh,
Which
boy.
reminded
Yep.
me so randomly of that. What was the, oh man, what was the episode or the legend that we did that was like games? And it was the one where it was like, do you want red or blue? And it was like either you are like
Oh,
are choked or your
uh-huh.
back is ripped off.
Yeah, that was
Kind of made me think of that.
Japan. Something in
Yeah.
Japan.
That
Yeah.
sounds right. So yeah, anyway, the Japanese love that shit,
Uh-huh.
apparently. They're said to have an appetite for children, and
Uh-huh.
those foolish enough to swim alone in remote places, in which you and I would probably both be dead.
Uh-huh.
But this part really sent me. They especially prize fresh cucumbers.
Oh.
I was like, that is
Of all
we like
things,
children's flesh and cucumbers.
cucumbers.
So if you're gonna swim alone, carry some cucumbers to,
To
appease them.
offer. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Then throughout West, South, and Central Africa, there is a mythical water spirit called Mamiwata, which means mother of the waters, and was once worshipped for its ability to bestow beauty, health, and wisdom to its followers, according to the Royal Museums, Greenwich. Mamiwata is often portrayed as a mermaid or snake charmer. However, her appearance has been influenced by presentations of other indigenous African water spirits, as well as European mermaids and Hindu gods and goddesses, according to the Smithsonian. So, interesting.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm going to get into, like a couple like real, quote unquote, real mermaid sightings.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I thought was really interesting is like what I've seen on a lot of these sites is that like so it's not scientifically possible for a woman and a bird or a woman and a fish to be half and half. It's just not
Right.
possible.
Mm-hmm.
Because for one, like if we think of sirens, for example, birds are actually genetically closer to dinosaurs than they are to humans.
Yes.
So like our genomes are just like not compatible whatsoever. That said, could it be something else that evolved, from the same family as like a manatee, for example, that just looks more human?
Right.
On the top half, because like manatees, they look soulful. They look like
Yeah, they do.
dogs, kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of weird. So, and who knows, like maybe there's something lurking in the depths that potentially, and this is what I was getting to, is like even if they don't exist today, could they have existed?
Then,
which is like possible.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the sea cow went extinct
Right.
from
Exactly.
overhunting.
Exactly.
Things happen.
Yeah. So why is that? Why is this necessarily anything different?
Mhm.
So the reality of mermaids was assumed during medieval times when they were depicted very matter-of-factly alongside other known aquatic animals like whales. So it's kind of interesting. So it was like, oh yeah,
Yeah, they
whales, fish,
exist.
sharks, mermaids.
Yeah.
Hundreds of years ago, sailors and residents in coastal towns around the world would tell of encountering sea maidens. One story dating back to the 1600s claimed that a mermaid had entered Holland through a dike and was injured in the process. She was taken to a nearby lake and was nursed back to health. She eventually became a productive citizen, learning to speak Dutch, perform household chores, and eventually converted to Catholicism, according to, get this, The Flying Dutchman and Other Folktales from the Netherlands by Theo Mater. So it's like, oh, that's kind of funny.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah. Another encounter, once offered as a true story, is described in Edward Snow's Incredible Mysteries and Legends of the Sea. A sea captain off the coast of Newfoundland described his 1614 encounter. Captain John Smith of Jamestown fame saw a mermaid swimming about with all
Poppable.
swimming about with all possible grace. He pictured her as, or described her as having large eyes, a finely shaped nose that was somewhat short, and well formed ears that were rather too long. Smith goes on to say that her long green hair imparted to her an original character that was by no means unattractive. In fact, Smith was so taken with this lovely woman, he began to experience the first effects of love as he gazed at her before his sudden and surely profoundly disappointing realization that she was a fish from the waist down. Surrealist painter Rene Magritte depicted a sort of reverse mermaid in his 1949 painting, The Collective Invention, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
By the 1800s, the hoaxes were just fully in there. So people started churning out fake mermaid stuff to satisfy public interest in the creatures, including the showman P.T. Barnum. He displayed the Fiji mermaid in the 1840s, and it became one of the most popular attractions. People, though, expected to see a long-limbed, fish-tailed beauty comb her hair, as it was really just a grotesque fake corpse, which was a few feet long, had the torso, head, and limbs of a monkey, and the bottom part of a fish. So obviously fake to modern eyes, but it did fool some people back in the day.
Yeah, I saw a picture of that when I was doing my research. It's not very convincing.
And kind of gross, honestly. So the concept, so that was like first sighting that's written or recorded is 1600s. Through the, late 1700s and 1800s, it was just like everybody was just like making shit up. Then comes along a biologist named Sir Alister Hardy, who in 1960 proposed a theory to explain some of the anomalies of human evolution. So our lack of fur, big brains, and subcutaneous fat, which are qualities usually seen in marine mammals, are just some traits that have led Hardy to propose that humans descended not from savanna-dwelling apes, but more marine environments. So Hardy and supporters of his aquatic ape theory suggest that humans took to the water to find food instead of land and eventually evolved to live in the water, which many have used to perpetuate the idea of mermaid existence. And there's a lot of research done by Ohio State University on not just like the scientific possibility of that, but also like the psychology of like trying to, perpetuate the idea of their existence. Right. Hardy's theory remains largely controversial and is lacking in evidence. I think similar to complaints of like Bigfoot, like why haven't we found, even fossils or anything that would, imply that there's some like seemingly humanoid creature in the ocean. And the majority of archaeological evidence supports a human evolution that occurred on land rather than in the water. Now, that said, I feel like water is not the best place to maintain archaeological findings. It's like on land, they get trapped in whatever amber or whatever, and you can see. But, salt water especially is like really corrosive. So it's like, it's like, I don't know.
That's a good point.
I don't know. Just a thought. So there's that. And then there's one other, where was it? There was one like theory someone had posted about mermaids that I thought was so interesting. Okay, here we go. So mermaids, this person also conflates mermaids and sirens, so I'm not sure which she's talking about, but I think it's actually mermaids. And this is like comes from, I think, another source of mythology that's not Syrian or Greek. It's one of the others. And it's basically the idea is like instead of being the daughters of Triton, they were humans, so mankind who
Yeah.
married fallen angels and produced a race of giants. So God punished
Huh.
these daughters along with the fallen angels, and as punishment, God made those daughters mermaids. They were commanded to
Hmm.
live in the water, and they are evil creatures who entice male humans with their extreme beauty and charm and then trap them and eat them afterwards. Throughout history, many
Thanks.
people were attacked and killed by mermaids, according to legend. Um, and like basically the idea that like real mermaids are nothing like Ariel. Like they're not
Yeah.
friendly, they're
Uh-huh.
scary and demonic and like bad juju.
Yeah.
So thought that was kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And
It,
then the last thing I'm going to cover briefly is the Kraken.
I was hoping so.
Yeah. So the Kraken, this is from the Natural History Museum. The Kraken originated in Scandinavian folklore and is usually depicted as an aggressive cephalopod-like creature capable of destroying entire ships and dragging sailors to their doom.
Ooh,
So there's
spooky.
a in 1801, the Natural History Museum in London actually has this, I guess, drawing. I don't know if it's a painting or a drawing. It's kind of hard to tell, but it's a colossal octopus attacking a French ship by malacologist Pierre Denis de Montfort. I don't know what
Hmm.
a malacologist is.
There we
Sorry,
go.
what was it? What was a malacologist? Say it again.
Um, a malacologist, they deal in the branch of invertebrate zoology that deals with the study of mollusks.
That seems, yeah, I guess they're, I was just thinking mermaids, and I was like, they would be vertebrates, but no.
Yeah, no.
Uh,
Yep,
cephalopods, not so much.
right. Makes sense.
So, many cultures around the world have a myth or legend about some kind of tentacled monster bothering seamen, sinking ships, etc. In ancient Greece, Aristotle and Pliny wrote about Tuthos, which is a squid.
Hmm.
There's the Scylla in the Odyssey and similar myths from the Caribbean. Um,
Hmm.
uh, Japan, New Zealand, they have their own that I'm not going to try to pronounce their names because it's Japanese and then like native New
Uh-huh.
Zealand.
Yeah,
So I cannot pronounce that.
yeah.
Obviously, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, there's a squid
Hmm.
inspired Kraken there. And something that's just like to call out is like squid and octopi, whatever, are
Hmm.
very unusual animals. Their body plan isn't really similar to anything else that we know of in the sea. They
Hmm.
move quickly, and the way that their bodies, arms, tentacles move seem to stimulate something in our fear of the unknown, according to one of the writers of this article. His name's John Abbott, who's a senior curator of mollusca, I guess, at the National Natural History Museum.
Hmm.
Um, so in Norway, the Kraken myth grew, and there would be like washed up specimens, like partially digested or rotted remains of giant squid or large octopus that were washing up on beaches. And people were like, what the hell is this? Before we really knew what squid or octopi were.
Hmm.
So, there's sort of this myth that comes along with that. Now, what's interesting to me is the idea that like giant squid are, that's real. Like they're real. They were
Yeah.
first classified by Western, marine biologists, I guess, in 1857. And, we're still trying to unpack like their mystery. Like we have ideas about how big they can get, but basically they're found in temperate waters all over the world. They live between 200 and 1400 meters below the surface. Females are thought to grow up to 13 meters, and slightly smaller males
Wow.
reach 10 meters. Giant squid aren't fussy eaters. They hunt fish and crustaceans and also scavenge. Scientists have found some evidence of cannibalism, but there are no signs of ships being on the menu. Um, they have the giant squids have the second largest eyes of any creature on Earth. So this is one of their greatest
Oh,
like
wow.
evolutionary adaptation,
Hmm.
which is used to help detect and avoid sperm whales, which is the only
Hmm.
predator large enough to eat a giant squid when it's fully grown. Um,
Wow.
Some other species of smaller squid are aggressive pack hunters, but the giant squid is thought to lead a solitary life in deep, temperate water, far from human contact. They probably can't get big enough to take down a ship, but then again, it would kind of depend on the size of your ship.
Right.
And giant squid can't get the oxygen that they need at the surface. So when you do come across a live one at the surface, it's likely because they're stressed and most likely dying.
Mm.
But like things we don't know how they mate, we don't know how long they live for or how they grow. They're very
Hmm.
mysterious, and it's obviously exciting to scientists that we're still having to like answer some of these
Research. Yeah.
questions. Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, the giant squid remains one of the most elusive large animals in the world, which of course contributes to the aura of mystery. Um, a lot of people don't think that it actually exists. Like people consider it like a kraken or a mermaid, like something that's just like lore in their mind.
Uh-huh.
But you know, they're real. And I think
Right.
I don't know. I think it's like kind of presumptuous for us to believe that to just say outright like, oh, they can't get big enough to down a ship. Like maybe they
Yeah.
don't anymore, but before
Yeah.
there were humans really like in the ocean, who knows? Like they
Hmm.
could have evolved to be far away from humans because we kill them, you know?
Definitely.
So it's like,
Yes.
I don't know. I don't necessarily buy. I think of all of them, I'm most open to the idea of like the Kraken existing. That just doesn't seem
Yeah.
that far out to
Far
me.
off. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I would agree. I've been watching that thing on Apple TV. It's like Prehistoric
Yeah.
Planet. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the things that existed then were so massive.
Wild.
And
Huge.
I don't see why a giant squid couldn't
Right?
be hanging out in the depths of the ocean.
Yeah.
They're, yeah,
I don't think so either. I don't know. I don't think it's
obviously,
like it's depicted in Clash of the Titans, but like, you know,
right.
I think
Yeah,
it's possible. It has existed if it doesn't anymore, you know?
right. Yeah. And obviously, that's not in prehistoric times like in
Right.
the show, but still,
Right.
like, there have been creatures of insanely massive size on our
Right.
planet.
And there
So,
still are.
right. Yeah, true.
There still are,
It's true.
especially like, I don't know, in Africa and stuff, like African elephants, those mofos are
Mm-hmm.
massive. And so are
Yeah.
whales. Whales are
Whales.
huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's not too far off
I
to
don't know.
me. I
Yeah.
don't know about
And also
that.
whales are all like blubbery and they're mammals. So it's like they're heavy and slow. But I feel like a cephalopod
Mm-hmm.
is not slow because they're made of
Just zoom
such like a
around.
lighter,
Yeah,
I don't know, biomaterial. How would you even
whatever
describe
it
that?
is. Yeah, I
Tissue?
don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't know. But
Yeah.
anyway, so Krakens are probably real. TBD on
Mm-hmm.
mermaids, but
Yeah. I wish
do you
they
ever do
were
that
real.
thing? Me too. That thing when you were little where you put a hair tie around your ankles and you play mermaids in the pool.
Yes. Absolutely.
Ah, those
I
were the good
loved it.
days.
Mm-hmm.
An
We're
easier
having
time.
tea parties on the bottom of the
Hell
pool.
yeah. Holding your breath for as long as you can till you're
Yeah.
turning purple. Yep.
Yeah. So fun.
The good old days.
Yeah. The best of
Well,
times.
it was the best of times and it was the best of times.
Uh-huh.
Well, thank you for joining Under the Sea. I feel like this was like almost more scientific than spooky, but at the same
Yeah.
time, like I really
It's
do
cool
kind of think
though.
the Kraken is real.
Yeah, same. I'm willing
Just
to believe
in
it.
conclusion, I
Uh-huh.
believe in that shit.
Yep. You can
Well,
cite
do with that what
us
you will. You can cite us. We're
in
an
your school
official
papers.
publication. Yeah.
Yeah.
Please cite us. In the footnotes. Amy Keith
Mm-hmm.
et al.
Yep.
Amazing. Well, thank you for listening. Follow us on social if you don't already at Girls Gone Spooky. If you yourself have seen the Kraken or a mermaid or or the Flying Dutchman, really, because
Oh yeah.
that shit definitely is for real.
Uh-huh.
Holler at us, girlsgonespooky@gmail.com. And yeah, most importantly, stay spooky, my friends.
Stay spooky. See you next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.